Hello and welcome to a bit of a video on just my thoughts after the fourth open test for Dark and Darker. So again, this is the fourth alpha playtest. The game, I believe, at this point is still now it says 2023. I think it's meant to be like the end of 2023. It's coming out. So I guess at tops, assuming it stays to schedule, that means it's anywhere in the next 10 or so months. Got a bit of footage running in the background here, just of a few games that I recorded while playing the alpha. I think all of these were filmed on the last day or two when I were. I think I got my max level cleric at this point, so enjoy. But it's going to be a bit of a. I'm going to kind of do this as a top 10 and a bit of a bonus thing on my thoughts at the end. So these are kind of things that I want to see changed or added into the game. I'm going to mostly be focusing on things that I want to see changed, things that are already in the game, at least partially, or systems that I think could be replaced with other better systems than that. I'm not going to go on about things we could add, because, there's a lot of things you could add to a game, but... So, top 10, things change. Starting off with, and it's going to be kind of a listing sort of things that I think are more important in the game. So number 10 is going to be the karma system. Right? It's just been added this patch, well, this playtest. New edition. So you can get karma by basically players have to commend you after a game. Yeah? Players have to give you a thumbs up, and you get one of these that you can give out every 5 times you escape. Right? Okay. You can also give people a thumbs down, or you can forgive them if their team killed you. But again, you can only do this once every, not 5 games, 5 escapes. Right? Now, unless you're playing a lot, 5 escapes could be, it could honestly be a while. Right? It could be a while, could 5 escapes. We're talking, it might be 5 games, it might be 50, it could be anywhere, right? With the number of players in a game, the odds are not in your favour either. So, not only that, but you can only store one of these. It's not like you can accumulate 5 or 6 of them after playing for a long time, and then you get in with a really good group, and you... Because this is the other thing as well. Say I do get in a good group, I want to commend the 2 players that I'm with, right? I want to commend them. Yeah? Give them a thumbs up. Well played, guys. You are talkative on the VoIP. New feature, by the way, the VoIP. Absolutely love it. But I want to say, you were good on the VoIP. You were well mannered. You played well. You helped me out. You didn't steal all the loot. You did a good job. I want to commend them. I can't. I can only store one of these. Why can't I store 2? Good question. So I think there needs to be less of a requirement. It shouldn't be 5 escapes, and you should be able to store a couple of these, at least enough so that you can give one to both of your party members, for Christ's sake. Come on. Don't be stingy with them. Honestly, I'd drop it to just 1 escape to get one of these back. I don't know if I should even, if we should even be tying it to escapes, Maybe it'd be like, 1 escape or 3 regular games, whichever comes first. Because otherwise, what's the point in, having the ability to commend and have disavow people if you can't actually really get these very easily? It kind of defeats the point. On that note, another thing I just want to kind of put out there as a bit of an idea. What if classes were tied to this as well? Just as like a weird idea. I've noticed the rogue is, as you can see here, a bit of a backstabber in the game. Never trust them. Honestly, kill them on sight. Don't trust rogues. And it does honestly make me wonder. Maybe rogues should be tied to having negative karma. Maybe clerics should be tied to having good karma. Just a weird idea that's out there. So that's my number 10. As you can see, that's kind of, a less a priority thing, right? Number 9, lockpicks. Have you ever tried one of these? They are nigh on impossible. If you ever played Dead by Daylight, it's doing like one of the hard skill checks that you get from when a killer puts overcharge on the generator or something, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's stupidly fast. You barely even get to see it flicker up on the screen. Your mind read what the hell it's asking of you. And it's gone. You blink and you miss it. Like I'm supposed to even hit that. And you're just kind of left there thinking afterwards, like, why on earth is it that quick? And it's ridiculous. And you cannot get into these locked chests. And lockpicks are apparently just some kind of like this tool is apparently just non-existent. It seems in this universe. We're not in Skyrim where lockpicks are literally in every dresser drawer. We're not in that world. We're in a different world where lockpicks are a rare commodity, it would seem. So I think that the lockpicks should be easier to find. They should be found more often. And maybe ease up on the difficulty. Just as something... I wouldn't mind if it were maybe a result of your stats as well. So, I mean, I know the rogue can get skills that are specific to the rogue that help them with lockpicks. I think they can like open chests without destroying lockpicks or without needing them. But yeah, that seems like something that maybe the lockpicks difficulty, like the lockpicking difficulty, should be tied to maybe like your resourcefulness stat or something. Just an idea. If there were just some way, even if it were up to you on laying out your stats in order to make it happen, but if there was some way of making this an easier task that wasn't as ridiculous. Number 8. Bit of a... I think everyone will probably agree with this one. Number 8, traps. As well as this, there's a particular example that was in my cleric guide where I get hit in the head by a trap that's literally in a darkened corner of the room that's partially clipping through a rock face, so you can only see half of the spike. And it impales me and nearly kills me. Right? The traps in the game, some of them, the single ones that are like sort of head height, those ones are particularly nasty. Yeah, the wall spikes, I believe those ones are. They are particularly nasty. And honest to God, I have no idea. Like some of the traps, they are so vicious. The other traps, like the floor spikes, they're easily noticeable. They don't deal too much damage, but they are so difficult to avoid. So the traps seem to be like, it's a very mixed bag. Some of them are straight up insanely difficult to avoid, but very obvious. Others are really just difficult to spot, but very easily avoided. For wall spike, just crouch. So it's just stuff like that. Like, could we have more consistency with them? Could they be all of them similarly easy to spot? So maybe not too hard, not too easy. Like the floor spikes are obviously way too easy to spot unless you've not got torches anywhere near them. But you can't jump far enough to actually jump over and avoid them unless you're on like a higher height, like you're on a staircase jumping off or something like that. It's very difficult to avoid a lot of the traps, a lot of the floor spikes in the game. It's almost just like, to pass here you must take damage. You might as well just say that. I wouldn't actually mind, like one way of doing it would be if maybe you threw something onto the floor spike, it triggered it, and then it would go back down, and maybe you have, I don't know, 3 seconds of time in which you can run over it where it won't trigger again, something like that. And you could hear like a spring mechanism loading the trap back up to kind of indicate that that was happening. Something like that. The wall spikes can be, they're perfectly fine, but I'd make them easier to spot, I think actually what would be a good idea as well, like just as a thing to just point out as well. Honestly, I'm surprised the traps aren't actually just randomized. Like, there's a lot of areas where there's traps. You could make it so that there's a chance that traps will spawn in there or not. Make the dungeon somewhat semi-randomized. In addition, so in addition to that, the traps again, like I said, there could be semi-randomized, bit easier to see, but one idea as well could be we could completely change how we think about traps here. Instead of making them a difficult obstacle that is really hard to get by, why not make all the traps really obvious and really easy to avoid, right? And you go, well, that's going to make the game easy. No, you just put them in all the combat rooms. You just put loads of them everywhere in all the rooms where you're going to fight things. And then basically, it's not so much that the traps are hard to notice and difficult to avoid, it's that you're probably going to have to fight things while dancing around them. That would be another approach to it, just, changing your design philosophy over the placement. Ideas, food for thought there. I think if you're looking for a game that does that particularly well, think of, I think it was called, Temple of the Dead Gods, I think it was called. I think it was something like that. It's like this top-down game where you're going through this like ancient temple, trying to loot the place for gold and that. But the traps, they're all over the combat rooms. There's enemies going through them and everything, and absolutely you can use them to destroy enemies, set them off, like lure them into it, but that said, you're also fighting the enemies while trying to avoid them yourself. I get a bit of a lucky drop here as well, just on the video. We get a lion's head chest that's actually not locked, and actually has some really good gear in there. Nice purple longsword there. Anyway, I digress. On about the map and perhaps even procedural generation with the traps and things. Why is there not a map in the game? So this is number 7. Why isn't there a map? Just like, can I press M for map and bring up a map? Just, even if the map is like covered up when I first start the game, but then as I play more as that character, it maybe reveals it permanently or something for me. So maybe that could be an idea. The map you should have a map. Just, it's so difficult to navigate, especially since a lot of the rooms look very similar. Some of the rooms, like the one you can see on the screen here, this is a bit more memorable. You remember where it is, but honestly, I don't remember the connecting corridors and what rooms it leads to. And no, interiors are very difficult to memorize and navigate compared to a map where it's outdoors and that. You'll remember the individual rooms like this, but you'll not remember the connecting paths. It's a lot harder to navigate than you think, but a map really helps with that. I don't know why there isn't one in the game. It just seems like something that would make sense to me. On the subject though of like the random traps and then why isn't there a map, another thing that just crossed my mind as well is I do wonder why the map, if we're gonna try and if we're gonna have the same map every time, and it's all about learning the map and the strategies and so on, you should have a map that you can open up, right? But if we're gonna make it difficult to navigate on purpose, right, and we're not gonna give people a map that they can keep track of, then why not just make the dungeon randomly generated? Well, procedurally generated. I'm sure you could keep these main rooms exactly as they are, but just randomly generate the connecting paths between them. So you just randomly generate the corridors in between to create a random map. Fill the corridors with, again, like some traps that can or might, that may or may not spawn in, and that would make it a bit more dynamic. It seems one of those. It's like, finish up or get off the pot here. Make one decision or the other. Whereas they seem to be trying to straddle the fence a bit here. But that's number 7. Just talking about why I haven't got a map, and also a bit about just general map design, basically. Number 6, on about the map and the layout and things. The hell level. Just for the love of God, why? The first thing, obviously, the bosses. Jesus Christ, the bosses. And it's not just the hell level. It goes for the solo dungeon as well. Jesus Christ, the bosses are so, like, they're simultaneously overpowered and, like, basic, if you get my meaning. Like, the cave troll, it just runs at you and punches. And the quote-unquote tactics, if you can call it that, is to crouch down when it swings on a certain swing. And then on its other attack, you have to back up. And it feels like I'm not beating a hard boss so much as it is. Well, I'm saying it doesn't feel like I've watched people do this. I wasn't daft enough to try it myself, especially a cleric. But it feels like I am kind of cheesing the boss and exploiting the game mechanics more than actually. It feels like I'm doing that more than I'm actually beating a difficult boss. So you don't feel great about beating it. Because, it's like, no, you've cheesed it. You've cheesed the boss. I've not really won a difficult fight, I've just cheesed the hell out of him. And it doesn't feel like I've won fair and square. Well, again, I'm saying I mean, I imagine this is what it would feel, but I don't know. It just seems one of those things where it seems like cheating when I've watched people do it. It doesn't seem legit, and that's just the cave troll. The other bosses seem vague and verbose on how you're actually meant to kill them, and they've got weird mechanics, if you can call them that. But again, the bosses feel. I mean, I'll be honest with you, bosses are difficult to do in a game. I don't blame them that the bosses are a bit shit. I really don't. And honestly, as far as like gold standards for bosses go, I would honestly say that the gold standard I would typically put out there is something like Monster Hunter or something. But as for actual, like the actual bosses in the game, again, they just feel a bit too, yeah, I don't know how to put it. They'll do way too much damage. A boss that just has an insta-kill move is not fun for anyone. So yeah, just the bosses, it's like, get rid of the insta-kills. We tried to fight the ghost at one point, like the ghost king, and it literally one-shot the entire party at one point, even though I'd cast protection on my 2 party mates. Absolutely ridiculous. God knows as to why it did that. I really don't know. It's not fun. It's not fair. It shouldn't insta-kill an entire party. And if it's going to do that, there should be an obvious wind-up, like, oh my god, the boss is doing the thing, and, it's. I think that, again, it's difficult to say. It's like they do too much damage, they should have better tells. And another thing is just, while I'm on the topic of, like, hell and the bosses, hell is way too short. You do not have enough time in there to do anything. Never mind, like, beat a boss. Like, you have to be lucky that the circle lands on the right spot. Oh, that's something here in the video there you can see. We crouched, and on the subject of traps earlier, that wall spike hit me while I were crouched. Apparently it can do this if you're looking upwards because it manipulates your hitbox. I don't know if it's a bug or just bad design, but whichever it is, probably needs looking at. But yeah, it's with Hell and the bosses need to be maybe not necessarily made easier, but definitely redesigned. The one-shot kills need to be gone. If it's going to do a one-shot kill, it needs to be a big, obvious, oh, look, I'm going to one-shot kill this, this thing here. And there needs to be, there should be, oh, yeah, just enough time to actually defeat them in the dungeon. You shouldn't be crossing your fingers that the circle drops right, and yeah, I think honestly they need a bit of a complete overhaul in a lot of cases, and I have no idea why one's on the solo dungeon, and especially when the only way to beat it seems to be to cheese the hell out of it. Like if the way that you beat the boss feels like you're cheesing it, then the boss is badly designed. Like maybe the troll should have a charge attack, and there should be like pillars of some sort in the room that you have to get him to smash into, and when he does, it opens him up to attack, something simple like that. But it also helps if the combat had more to enable you to do things in this regard. Like if there were a dodge button, if the blocking was more consistent, we could probably redesign the bosses around that. So like, oh, he's using this attack, I need to block. Oh, here comes his big unblockable mega attack, and he does a big wind up and a roar, so you know. And then you can dodge out of the way or something. I think just generally speaking, the problem with the bosses might also just be highlighting issues with the general combat, which I will get to, don't worry, we're getting to the combat. So that's number 6, again, just problem with bosses, particularly in Hell, and most importantly, for the love of God, can you give him more time in Hell? It is not long enough to do anything in there, it really isn't. Just to summarise that. Moving on, trading. So trading really needs looking at. It really does. I don't want to be sat in a trading window for ages, and I'm there with a clogged loot inventory, and I'm trying to like sell things, but also my party's waiting on me. It's just annoying and frustrating. I should be able to just throw it into the marketplace, set a gold value that I want to get for it, and sell it for that amount, and just wait for offers to come in. Like you have in any MMO, a lot of online games where there's loot, there's some sort of marketplace, auction house type thing. It needs one of those. It really does. The trade chat goes too fast. It's hard to sell anything. It's just annoying as all hell. And this is in a playtest. That will only get so much worse. It's going to be so bad. It more than anything else needs like an auction house marketplace type thing where you can sell your goods at, while you're still dungeon running. It needs something like that horrifically. Because I am fed up of sitting around in trade chat. So just something to put out there, And trust me, in MMOs, online multiplayer games with loot, anything like that, you need to have things set up to manage the player economy, and it just isn't there yet. It's understandable it's an alpha, but again, this is things I want to see changed or added to the game, and it's annoyed me enough that it's on my list. It's halfway up my list. I also, though, think it would be one of the easier things to set up, compared to, redesigning combat systems and things. It's probably one of the easier things to do. That said, moving on to number 4. Now, there's a tab in the game for skills and level ups and things. And in all fairness, the skills and level ups, that entire bit, like, I've no idea what's going to be in there. Honestly, none. I just don't have any clue. But I think the game needs to give you something for leveling up. It shouldn't just be every 5 levels you get a new perk. It's like, no, I'm playing an MMORPG. Please, please, please give me like some skill points. I mean, this is something I have. And by the way, since you're reusing these characters, they don't like die at the end of a run. I mean, they kind of do the loot resets, but it's still the same character at the same level and so on. So obviously, you'd want to be able to like reset this at no cost, well, just so you can respec and that on the fly without having to level up again. But like getting like a skill point per level that I can put into, say, strength, knowledge, willpower or something, yeah? It would be yeah, I'd be so thankful for something like that. Put simply, at the moment, you can't do that. If I want to increase my spell capacity, so I could bring, say, the revival spell, I have to go and find gear, hope that it rolls additional spell capacity or bonuses to knowledge, right? And then equip a bunch of it. And only then will I manage to get enough spell capacity in order to be able to, only then will I get enough spell capacity in order to be able to go and put on, say, the revive spell, the resurrection one. Because otherwise, it's just there's no other way of doing it. So yeah, like I say, I kind of just want an ability to add skill points as I deem fit. Because as the cleric, I would love some additional spell capacity for my first few levels, and then just a better interaction speed. Like, I would level up resourcefulness just so I'm not as slow at using items. Because, Christ almighty, when you watch my character use an item in this, you'll notice the cleric has one of the lowest resourcefulness stats, which means all of her interactions are absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, and that's just a thing. They're absolutely awful for it. I'd love to be able to change that. I'd love to be able to carry more spells, you know. So I think some kind of stats and level up system. Again, they've got a coming soon page where it says, I think it's like skills and levels or something it's called. So this may be in the works, I don't know. But it definitely needs something other than just perk slots. It's an RPG, for heaven's sake. I should be able to do more than just that. So yeah, just something to consider. That I think it's definitely something that I want to see added into it. So now we're getting into the more in-depth stuff now, right? I think the last 3 topics here are a bit more like, yeah, this is a big thing that's really impacting the game. Some people would think they're controversial, and I think in a lot of cases, while they are controversial, while people might think they're a bit, maybe not, maybe it shouldn't work like this. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think these are definitely things that I would like to see change more than anything else. And I think something needs to be done at least in the regards to these. So to kind of start things off, the number 3 on my list is going to be classes. So classes are a big part in the game, right? They really are. And the balance of those classes, now it's something they're definitely working on, But while it is something they're working on, it definitely needs more work. And I've just realised the clip that's in the background that this is from now. So while on, just before I get started fully on that, of course, bugs and issues and things in the game need fixing and should take priority. You'll see a very interesting one in the background now. We all went in as a group, we queued as a group, we entered the inn as a group, we joined as 3 solos. So here's an interesting one to watch. We ended up having to stream each other on Discord to find out where the hell we were, because again, we don't have a map. You know that issue with a map? Yeah. Right, classes. Number 3. First things first, the Barbarian. Holy crap, are they overpowered, right? The Barbarian is the most overpowered thing I've seen throughout this playtest. In previous playtests, the Barbarian was pretty gnarly. He's like, oh god, that... Barbarians were a problem. They're becoming more of a problem. As I say, the class balance is an ongoing thing that they're doing, right? Class balance is an ongoing thing, and it's evident. In previous playtests, they nerfed the Ranger. The Ranger got a big nerf. The whole reloading mechanic wasn't a thing at first. Now it is, right? So stuff like that they're getting, they've nerfed that. The Wizard has been heavily nerfed. They brought in the spell system that nerfed both the Wizard and the Cleric, which I don't agree with, but I am a Cleric main, so of course I'm not going to agree with it, but my bias is there, but the Barbarian hasn't yet received some kind of mega nerf, so the Barbarian can basically, and I actually saw a video of this online. I was watching someone who were like going around basically gloating that they'd gone and got full ruby silver gear. And they were like, video were like, oh look, it's full ruby silver gear, look at me, oh I'm doing all this stuff, yeah. He nearly dies in the Goblin Caves to a Barbarian who just had, pretty much nothing on them apart from like a blue axe, right? So they'd gone in with a decent axe, nearly killed the guy in full ruby silver. If he'd have come out with that stuff, there's like 10k worth of gear on the floor that he'd have just got because he happened to have a blue axe. Like, Jesus Christ. The Barbarian's damage is way too over the top. And the thing is, you think, but there must be a glass cannon. No, they can take a hit. They've got the highest health in the game. And sure, they don't start with armour, but they can obtain armour. And when they obtain armour, they enter their true form. So, the funny thing is, when I was actually using the Barbarian, I actually hated them because they've got no ability to regenerate health or anything, so I felt like I got no sustain, and I was just taking hit after hit, even though I'd then, like, completely punish the enemy for doing it. So they weren't my cup of tea. I also wasn't used to the weapon range. I will tell you this, the Barbarian's swing does not reach as far as you would think. But there definitely is something doing about them, because people who actually are competent with them can and will absolutely wreck you. And I don't just mean they'll do a bit of damage. No, they will one-shot you. And you'll see here, the person I am actually teamed up with, who I've been teamed up with here and in the previous game, one is a Barbarian, and they just walk into rooms and take out entire teams. It's actually a bit ridiculous. So, looking at other classes though, so the Cleric. This is one I definitely know about, the Cleric. They're a great class. They're actually the best class for just clearing out PvE enemies. They can get bonuses for attacks against the undead. They can self-heal. Their abilities can not only heal, but can be used to deal damage, usually against the undead, but again, it's... they are actually just one of the better room clearers, especially in the castle, because most of the enemies are undead. So, straight up just one of the best PvE room clearers that there is. Their AoE ability that hits all undead for 100 is an absolute saviour versus like hordes of skeletons and mummies, or when rooms are just full of spiders. That said, they do have issues. I tend to think the thing that's annoyed me with them is, so say for example, so I mentioned reviving earlier. You used to be able to revive people as the cleric, yeah? Now they've added more spells since then, which is nice, and you can swap them out, which, you know, that's a bit of a buff. But they've also made the price for resurrection way too high. Right, so this is one of the ways in which the cleric's been it's had their utility nerfed a bit. Resurrection, you used to just get it in your base kit. Now it's very expensive to use. If you didn't know, if you've not used a spellcaster, you basically get so many slots for your spells. It's called spell capacity. Simple enough. It's based on you can get stats that literally are plus spell capacity on your armor, or you can get things that increase knowledge, which is your base stat, the one that spell capacity is tied to. Increasing either of these will increase your spell capacity. Just to put it out there, I think the base heal, the lesser heal, is like 2. The big heal, Holy Light, that can be used on your allies, that heals for twice as much as that, or can be used against the undead to deal 100 damage, that costs 6. Very expensive. Revive costs 8. You get 12 spell capacity base, right? So revive, you could take that and then the basic heal and nothing else, right? So you can completely neuter your healing abilities so that you can possibly revive someone who's dead. I don't think that the revive has that big of an effect because you're using it out of combat. So it doesn't affect the current fight you're in. It gives you more survivability for the next fight, right? So I don't think it's as big of a deal as they make it out to be. You know, it's not like you're firing off some kind of holy nuke that wipes the team that you're currently fighting. This is an after fight little spell that helps you come back into the fight. I don't think it needs to cost that much. My opinion, yours may differ. I think most people would agree because it's like, well, you're making the cleric OP. Yes, but remember, if the cleric has more utility and you're running with a cleric, you get that benefit as well. Would you like to be revived more often? I think most people would be. Also, that's another thing. On about maps earlier, I'd love the revive areas, like the revive spots, to be marked on the map. Again, it could be like a fog of war thing, like maybe you have to discover them for the first time for them to be marked for that character from then on. Maybe. It's an idea. Anyway, the other classes though, it's the way I understand it, this is how it goes. So the barbarian just murders everything. They get a ability that allows them to charge ahead. They do like bonus, I think it's bonus damage and bonus speed for a while. Or it might be bonus attack speed and bonus run speed, whatever. But they move fast as hell, closing on you and kill you in one. That's basically how they work. The fighter gets the shield. Well, they get shield, they get more gear. Put simply, a fighter will typically lose against a barbarian 1v1. But if the fighter has had time to get some gear, because they're very gear dependent, the fighter will typically win because they can get full plate. If they don't have full plate, they will pretty much guaranteed lose. And God help you if the barbarian has gear. That just kills everything. I've mentioned the cleric already. The cleric seems to be the class that's designed for not just wiping through base enemies, but they also seem to be the class designed for, I think they're meant to be like an anti-mage class, because they get a lot of built-in magic resistance, and they can put bubble shields up, so I think they're meant to be like the anti-spellcaster type thing. They can also get an ability that gives them poison resistance, that can make them quite handy against a rogue. Obviously, fighter, barbarian are just there to rush down enemy ranged classes. They're your front line. They're here to take aggro, hit things on the front, save you at the back, and rush down their ranged units. So that's where they seem to fit into the puzzle. Ranger and Wizard, they kind of backline DPS. Cleric kind of goes in the middle, Barbarians, Fighters first. But the ranged classes are difficult, and they're kind of balanced and simultaneously completely unbalanced. But the issue is, like, let me put this out there, right? Let's say I'm playing Call of Duty or Battlefield or something, and there's an enemy sniper, right? The sniper kills me. Do I feel bad? Do I feel like it was unfair in any way? No. Why? Well, if the sniper looks at me, I see a glint in the scope. That lets me know that, yes, Eye of Sauron style, they are looking at you. This is to tell you they are definitely looking at you. And, in fact, this is a feature on the newer Call of Duty, I think, as well. The bigger the scope they use, like the bigger the zoom, the bigger the scope glint. So it's like looking at a flashlight, it's like there's a second sun in the sky if they've got the biggest scope. So you can see them from a fair distance. So you know they're there, right? Secondly, they then have to shoot and adjust for the drop, right? Okay, so there's a bit more skill to it than just, put crosshairs on your face. They have to actually go, oh yes, I see, I have to, they're about 200 meters out, and I need to do that here on the scope. Interesting thing as well on these games, you can usually ping. It tells you the distance, and then you can, usually the scopes have actually got accurate distances on them. If you put it to like the 200 meter notch on the scope, it will actually headshot them. Really good feature. But so they actually have to think about it and adjust for drop, and then you might be moving. Well, now they have to adjust for movement. And again, to get you in one, it has to be a perfect headshot. So when I get shot in one by a sniper at range, do I feel bad, or do I go, that's fair, that was a good shot? And I say that was fair, that was a good shot, right? Now, when I'm on Dark and Darker, and I go into a room, and there happens to be a long corridor, a long narrow corridor, the circle's closing in on my heels, and there's a ranger at the other side, or God forbid you enter a room where there's like a ridge or like an upper layer or something, and you're down below, and they're just shooting you as you go along and try to get up the stairs to get to them. Do I feel this is fair? Do I feel I can do anything? Do I feel that this was my fault when I just turned the corner and happened to be in the wrong position here? No, I feel like there should be something I can do here. And there often isn't. That's the problem. That right there is the problem. The ranged combat, it's basically you either meet them at long range and basically can't stand a chance and just die, or you meet them at close quarters round a corner, you just turn the corner, they happen to be there, and you kill them. Yay. So it's a bit weird, the ranged combat. It feels like as soon as the fight starts, you already kind of know whether or not you're going to win or lose, and whether or not you can actually do anything about it. I feel like the way that they should be balanced, honestly, I would give the ranger and wizard, I would say, honestly, they should have some like starting melee weapons. Moreover, I'd improve their melee capabilities, but I would maybe make it so that their ranged abilities aren't as potent. So they should feel more like they're at the back chipping away, but if they do get close, they can actually defend themselves. So almost like if they were 1v1 on you, they would probably get most of the damage done before you got to them, but then you would actually get a chance to fight them off at the end, whereas they need to get that last victory strike in there to finish you off. But something definitely needs to be done about the ranged combat. I think it's just a bit kind of odd at the moment. It's mostly about the way in which you die, not so much whether or not the class is OP or not. I think it's just other classes need some chance to fight back, rather than the battle kind of being decided at the start. Which brings me into kind of my I mean, I'll touch on that again when we get into we'll be getting into combat, but we're kind of touching on it there. But yeah. Lastly, the final class, rogues. I honestly don't know where they sit. I've seen them. I've fought against them. I've very easily killed them in most cases because I typically carry the skill that reduces negative effects by 50%. So clerics really are the rogue bane of the game. But all that said, they aren't frontline fighters. They give you the bonus of the lock picks, that they can just pick locks for free, basically. But again, I think that is indicative of a problem with lockpicks, and I don't think you should just have to have a rogue to get around that. On the topic of lockpicks, by the way, I think that something I forgot to mention earlier. I think you should be able to always pick chests that are by bosses. Well, not pick them; they shouldn't be locked. Chests guarded by bosses should always be open. I think that big chests that are around the castle should always be locked if they're not guarded by a boss. So the ability then of a rogue or someone with lockpicks is they can open chests that are just around the castle that aren't guarded by bosses but are basically boss quality chests. You can see again here the barbarian just annihilating in the background here, emphasizing my point that they're a bit much. Literally gets a free kill. As I was saying, the rogue. I almost feel like the rogue should almost be like a meme build, like a meme character. Again, I think it should be like you can get this if you've got negative karma. And I actually like the play style really is. It's exactly how a rogue should be. It's hit and run. They go in, they stab you with a bit of poison and run away like a scaredy little girl and go invisible in the corner, and then come back at you a moment later. Like these really hit and run tactics. They've got abilities that allow them to pick locks, and you can literally, I think, with one ability, steal from other players, like pickpocket them. I almost feel like the rogues should almost even be like a solo only character, but they should get like loads of traps and sneakiness, and there should be like an ambush character. They kind of currently are. So it's one of those. Like I will say the rogue is probably the most underpowered piece of crap garbage in the game. Because every time I've seen one, they either turn up from behind while you're fighting a different team and just start stabbing everyone, usually die in the melee, or they just come across your team of three and just get absolutely walloped by the barbarian and die. I mean, I've even crushed a few rogues. They seems very squishy, but then you'd think, oh, so there must be a glass cannon. No, they are not. They are weak. Like, they're weak and squishy. They completely rely on hit and run. They're in a weird spot, and I wouldn't say it's that they're powerful. I would say, if anything, they're the one class I would argue is maybe a bit underpowered. But I would almost say they should be made more like. I'd just kind of steer into the skid here. We could make rogues just like an absolute, again, almost like a funny, just like the fun class where you go around and just be an absolute just an absolute a-hole to everyone. Like, that should be the playstyle, just hit and run a-hole all the way. Just be able to run up to people, pickpocket them, stab them with poison and stuff like that. I don't know. They're in a weird spot. I'm not entirely certain what to suggest since I've not played them much, but just a few thoughts on the road there. Next thing I'm going to touch on is combat, actually, and this is a good point here, as you can see the team getting out, for me to swap over footage. But as you can see, we are no longer in Dark and Darker. No, we are not. And hang on, where's me? So I can find my mouse, because it's not entered into full screen. There we go. We are looking at a different game here that goes by the name of Chivalry 2. Currently, the gold standard for first-person melee combat is probably this. There's not many big games that do first-person melee combat. It's like this and Skyrim, and I think, what it called, like Mordhau or something. They're kind of the only ones that do, specifically first-person. Like, if you want good third-person combat, For Honor is the gold standard there. But first-person, it's probably Chivalry 2. I say Elder Scrolls as well, but let's be honest, Elder Scrolls wasn't that advanced, and it's also, it's well over 10 years now. I think, is it like 11 or 12 now at the time of recording? It's old. It's really old. It's an old game, and it's no longer relevant in terms of how to get, how to do this as a mechanic. But Chivalry 2 here, now, I'll admit, the block system on Chivalry 2 is very generous. I went back to this thinking like, oh, but wouldn't Chivalry 2 be the perfect way to do this? The blocks would have to be a lot less generous, particularly with when you're doing like counters and ripostes with the swords. I don't know if you should even be able to really do that, but certainly something that I've noticed in Dark and Darker is that the blocking is very yeah, it's inconsistent to say the least. Sometimes your block's up, you've got a big shield, you're aiming upwards to counter the overhead swing of a barbarian. I have literally seen like the dying frames of my character be, it's been like the sound of the barbarian's axe hitting my shield, sparks coming off of it, and I'm like, aha, I blocked him. And then the axe clips through the top of the shield and decapitates me. I've had things clip through my shield. So if it can clip through the shield, it's just not on, really. That should not be a thing. The blocking shouldn't be as generous as it is with Chivalry here, but it certainly needs to be improved, in particular with the shields, otherwise the fighter is just... Put it this way, if blocking is inconsistent, the meta of the game will shift very quickly to using two-handed weapons and always overhead attacking, because then you can one-shot everyone. And why block if it doesn't work? So that's where the game's going to go, and that means it's going to be very fast, punishing combat where a single hit just gets you killed because everyone's using two-handers. People will use barbarians more often than fighters. It kind of defeats the point of fighters being in the game entirely. And honestly, if there isn't a good blocking system, then the aforementioned issue where rangers just sit at range and just kill you, and the fight is decided before it really begins, because you either meet them at ranged and can't do anything, or meet them at close quarters and kill them, that problem will persist, because if you can't block the arrows with your shield, yeah, that's going to be an issue. So that said, the other thing I want to point out here is mostly about the melee and the moveset here. Each weapon in Chivalry 2, you have a slashing attack, you can see me doing that now, So we've got a slashing attack, obviously. If you block an attack, you go into like a riposte, like counter attack thing, which is more effective if you parry, if you've just blocked something, so it comes out as like a parry in that. But importantly, you've got a slash, you've got a stab, and you've got an overhead, right? Anyone who's played, say, the Barbarian, will tell you they are very fed up of swinging their axe and it hitting the side of the wall. They're using a big weapon in a small space, and so really it needs a designated overhead attack button. You know, rather than it being this weird two-piece combo on the right stick on the axe or something like that. It needs something else doing with it. You know. I'll agree as well. I'm oftentimes playing as the cleric and I'm just hitting things over the head because that's what the mace does. That's what the mace does. Every attack is an overhead. There's no swing or anything. And what it means is a player that knows what a cleric attacks, you know, what the cleric's attack style is, will know if they just hold their shield up a bit, it'll block every attack. Once they find that sweet spot, it blocks every attack. Because there's no other moves in the Mace's moveset. It's all just overhead. That's it. Obviously, the different types of swings and that should do different damage. Like if you try to do a lunge forward, like a big thrust, a stab, with say an axe, it's not going to do much. It should maybe knock the other player back a bit, but it's not going to do much damage. Unless it's an axe that's specifically made for that. You can get axes where there's like a spike at the end as well. But generally speaking, you know, doing that with like an axe or a warhammer shouldn't do much. Doing an overhead with those weapons should do extra. And big swinging attacks should do a lot as well. A stamina system being in the game so that you can't just keep slashing at people or run forever would be a good idea as well, I think. So, and we get to, you know, so we start thinking, you know, because the issue here, I think it's just they've put a basic combat system in that kind of gets the job done. But in all fairness, while it does get the job done, it doesn't do a very good job. And I think it could be much better. And you have to keep this in mind, right? If Call of Duty released with bad gunplay, it would be horrendous. Like, you'll notice, as much as the game is just a repetitive pile of crap each year, well, you know, I say that. It's actually Cold War, and when Warzone came out, it was a decent year that year. They actually innovated a fair bit. And Warzone 2's changed things. But that aside, if it just came out each year, and then one year, let's just say, they did bad gunplay, you'll notice the one thing that you can't say about Call of Duty is it has bad gunplay. Right? It has excellent gunplay. Because that's its bread and butter. The thing that it's been refining for, what is it now? Like, it'll be closing in on 2 decades now. It has been refining that gunplay, like a blacksmith sharpening a sword. And it is excellent at this point. You cannot deny that. You can never say Call of Duty has poor gunplay. It has excellent gunplay. Absolutely amazing gunplay. There are very few that are on par with it. Most of the games that are also AAA games themselves. Things like Doom Eternal and maybe not the more recent Battlefield, but but you get my point. You know, hard-hitting, meaty-sounding guns with like it's important because it's a shooter. If a shooter has bad gunplay, then it's not a good shooter at all. Like, the rest of the game can be a 10 out of 10, but if the core gunplay is bad, the game is bad. And it's the same here. Dark and Darker is a first-person dungeon crawling hack and slash, right? its first-person swordplay needs to be amazing, right? And I've no idea, by the way, here on the screen why it says I'm deserting when I've just got there and started shooting at things. Maybe I need to be like close to the fight, but I tried that here and it's still just saying I'm deserting even though I'm literally on the front lines. No idea, I think it's a glitch. As I die. Point is though, Dark and Darker needs to have good combat. The combat is the very core of the game. If the game's core is bad, then all you'll find is them trying to fix that for years to come. You know, they'll be trying to put band-aids around it and fix it. It's important, especially while it's in alpha, to get this thing right. It's right at the center of the game, so it needs to be excellent. So I think improving it in this way would be more than beneficial. I think it's an excellent way to go ahead. So yeah, having different moves assigned to different buttons, and if you tap them, you know, you should be able to combo them, you know, go from right to left, left to right, that sort of thing, then move into an overhead, that sort of stuff. Just basically like Chivalry 2 here. Again, the blocking needs to be better. It shouldn't be as generous as this. Absolutely not. This is very generous. You know, you can literally tap the block at the last second as a strike's hitting you, and you'll go into a full riposte and like behead the person. It's a bit OP, but generally speaking, the combat system is excellent here. They should look to emulate it to a certain extent at least. And just as like a little final thought on the combat, one thing I think we can all probably agree on, you shouldn't be able to change your stance while you're swinging. Like if you're swinging, you shouldn't be able to suddenly crouch at the last second. You know, it looks like you're going to hit them in one way, then you crouch and you hit them completely differently, completely throws them. Again, it's completely undermining any blocking mechanics you put in the game. People are going to stop using block fast if you just undermine the blocking mechanics like this. There's no point to blocking at the moment. You could almost just throw your shield away. And from what I've seen of dual wielding, it feels like you're attacking ever so slightly faster and doing a smidge more damage, but not by much. So I really do think if blocking isn't fixed, all you will see is nothing but two-hander spam. And that'll be every single game. So, yeah, not being able to crouch or jump while you're attacking, I think is a big one. By all means, jump into an attack and like a jumping attack if they want to do that. But you shouldn't be able to be swinging your attack and then jump, or swinging your attack and then crouch. It just shouldn't be a thing. And that brings me on to, finally, after an hour of this, last thing. What's the number one thing I think needs changing? I think many would agree. A little bit controversial, but I'll explain it. I think I can bring you around on this position. Why is there a circle? Think about it. Why is that there? It's because it's a battle royale. Yeah, but why is there a circle? Like, okay, I agree that there should be a timer in the dungeon. We don't want someone to just, oh, we've beaten all the other teams, let's go around and get all of the loot. No, that'll ruin the in-game economy. I'm not saying remove a time limit. Hell, I'm not even saying that there shouldn't be force towards a point on the map. But why a circle? Here's an idea. It's separated mostly into rooms, isn't it? Well, what if each room, if we went and picked a point on the map, we pick a room on the map, and that room will be the last room that gets hit with the dark swarm, you know, the circle effect on this game, right? So that's what it's called, it's the dark swarm. So that room will be the last one to go. The rooms adjacent will go before it, and the rooms adjacent to those will get hit by the swarm before them, right? So at the beginning of the game, it picks a room, and then the rooms just start going at a certain point. Yeah? rather than doing it as a circle, because this is the problem with the problem is caused by using interiors, and just drawing an arbitrary circle means you can have like a corner of a room be in the circle, but all the connecting corridors be sealed off, and it can lead to a lot of issues. If you've played for Goblin Caves, you will know full well of the issues this causes, because there's a lot more verticality to the Goblin Caves. You can be trying to find the escape, and well, guess what? That escape route has spawned below you, and the path to get there isn't in the circle, and you don't have a map. Do you see how these problems are starting to conflate and sort of get in the way of each other? We don't have a map. The route to the exit might be outside of the circle because the circle's fallen funny. And yeah, it's spawned on a different flight. It's the issues are starting to compound on top of each other here, to do with the map, the verticality of the levels, and the design of them, and the circle itself. We're seeing a big issue here. This is the sort of issue that's very obvious. Everyone sees this issue. There's no denying that that is an issue, right? If I were playing a battle royale and the thing that I need to win the game spawns in an area outside of my reach, on any other game, that would be considered a bug. That is a bug, right? It's like, oh no, it's spawned in the circle, so it's no, if you cannot path to it, if it's not guaranteed that you can path to it, that's a bug, right? That is a bug. Or it's at the very least a massive design flaw at the very least here, right? Just putting it out there, it really is. So again, the place is separated up into rooms. Why not make it so, okay, the room, and it could be a random room each time, but the rooms next to it, they'll go and fall to the Dark Swarm after, I don't know, I think, I'm trying to remember how long a game is here. I want to say it's about 10 minutes-ish, but I think it might be more 11 or 12. Let's say it's 10 minutes, because I can't remember, but let's say it's 10 minutes. The length of the game. Okay, so the last one will go after 10 minutes, right? And once it's gone, it doesn't kill you, right? It doesn't insta-kill you. You can keep going as long as you've got health. It shouldn't just be like, haha, 10 minutes is up, kill everyone. Because you might still be interacting with the thing, right? Gives you a bit of a breather. You've got some grace period there. The room could even start filling up with it, like, for the first few, for like the first 10 seconds it doesn't affect you much, then it starts affecting you a lot. Or you could just make it so that the longer you're in the Dark Swarm, the more damage you take. That might be a better idea. But it should go room by room. So the ones next to the exit should, if the exit one goes after the full timer, they should go after like 80% of the timer or whatever, yeah? The ones adjacent to them maybe after 60% of the time's gone, and the ones before them maybe after like 30% of it. So a few minutes in, the outer rooms will all go, a couple more minutes and the ones next to them will go, and so on and so forth, right? And that's what I'm thinking it should be like, as opposed to the weirdness that we have right now, right? Because right now it's an obvious issue that needs addressing. Now, that's that's my top 10. That's it. And I do think that genuinely, given that it's obviously a problem already, especially on the Goblin Caves with the verticality. Obviously a problem, made worse by not having a map. I think that's the one that is going to cause the most issues and probably needs sorting right away. I think it's also the most obvious problem. There is one more thing I'll just mention before I go, a bit of a bonus on this, because I was thinking, I'll do it as a top 10, but I did think of one more just before the end. Don't know quite where to put it because I'm not sure what effect this will have. So, bonus one here for you. End game. Think about it. End game. Right? We get to the point where everyone's level, they're all max level, they've got all their stuff. And they start getting through dungeons, even to the point where they start doing high roller dungeons. And they're getting loads of gear. In each alpha test, we've seen people getting to the gold cap. Sure, it's been people who stream, so they've been playing they've spent every waking hour on the game. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be impossible for everyone else. It just means it'll take them longer, right? Eventually, people will get to a point where they're inundated with blues and purples and things. And I'll tell you where the problem comes in. And it happens with every MMO. It happens with every game where there's like an in-game economy. Especially if we create that marketplace I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Each time someone goes into a dungeon, more loot is created, right? Loot that wasn't in the economy before is added in. Generally speaking, more loot is entering the economy than leaving it, right? So, given that that's the case, is loot going to be more expensive or less expensive as time goes by? Sure, it will at least cost the minimum transaction fee for the merchant, right? So the transaction fee is 15 gold. So the loot will always sell for at least, I guess, 16 gold or whatever, but well, 15 gold plus whatever you'd normally get for it at the merchants, plus like 1 gold extra at least. But there will be a minimum, but how quick are we going to hit that minimum? And at what point do greens just get so common that nobody loots or sells them anymore because we're just inundated with blue and purple items, right? It might take a while, but again, we've seen people hitting the gold cap and filling their stash. And you might think to yourself, well, yeah, you've got a stash limit. It can't get to that point, surely. That can cause another problem. If you can't hoard your gear, you're going to use it more. That means you'll see people in better gear more often because they can't hoard it, so they use it. So there needs to be a way of getting around this. I have no idea what that way is. MMOs and things have been trying to figure this out for years. I think Tarkov just straight up wipes everyone's loot stashes and things every so often from what I hear. So that's one way of doing it. But yeah. What happens when you reach max level and everyone else does and there's loads of loot floating around? I have thought of actually one possible solution for this to prevent people who say don't have much gear going against people who do. So I've got one proposed solution, and I've tried to do that for everything on this list. I've tried to provide a bit of like, oh, we could do that, we could do this to solve it, So that's the problem. The one solution I thought of, and it's kind of based on the high roller system they've got in, and I imagine that's exactly why they put this in. High roller costs you money to enter, and you're gonna get better loot and stuff there. Pretty good. Here's an idea. What if you loot based on like the modifiers and that it generated when the loot was generated, it added a power score to the loot. Just a way of the game kind of knowing this loot is this powerful. Yeah? This loot has got X amount of power. It's really good. And honestly, it's, I don't know, if we were to put a number on it, it would be 120. It's 120 power. And they've got all the other gear on, and it all adds up to, I don't know, 600. And then when you went in the dungeon, instead of it being Yeah, so what they could do is average out everyone's loot score and then kind of build up the enemies to have as good loot, well, as like the average-ish score or something. Or you could even have like brackets of dungeons, like, oh, you won't be matchmaked against people based on, you'll be matchmaked against people based on your gear score. So if you're fighting with better gear, it'll matchmake you with better players. The argument then, though, is that, well, yeah, but what's the point of wearing better gear then? And again, you could make it so that better loot drops in these dungeons. Maybe increase the enemy's power a little bit. There's ways around this. There's certainly ways around it. That's just my initial thoughts on how you would possibly get around it. But I think this could potentially be a problem as well. Right. That's it. That's, I think, just about everything. Everything I'd want to see added, changed in the game. And I've just thought of another bonus one I could have mentioned, maybe some kind of enchanting or crafting system as well for gear, but I think that's maybe something to discuss at another point. Might be something worth adding than putting that in. I wouldn't mind it. But I think those ones that I've mentioned are definitely the top things that I would be prioritising. The circle and combat in particular, I think, are the biggest things that need to be fixed. Because they really, really are at the absolute core of the game. Class balance, I know they're already looking at. They're actively changing and adjusting them all the time. And, yeah, they just need to, as I mentioned, they're kind of, with class balance, it's just something they're going to have to keep adjusting and working on. Barbarians definitely need something doing to them at the moment. Problem is, if you make them too underpowered, like that swing they've got, the way they can one-hit people, is kind of the one thing they've got going for them, so I'd be worried about that. But I think combat, the circle in general, things like that, I think these are more at the core of what the game needs fixing. Because, again, as I mentioned, if you don't have the core of your game right, if you don't have the core of your game sorted before release, you're going to have difficulties. You really are. Because that needs to be prioritised above everything else. All that said, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again in future videos. I hope you enjoy me going absolute, like, crazy maniac mode on this Wraith. Somehow beating it as a cleric solo. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you agree with it, if you've got your own ideas, if you think that some of mine are good, but you'd say, oh, maybe tweak it this way, maybe tweak it that. There's lots of things that you could do with this. I think the game's got a lot of, at the very least we can say it's got a lot of potential. And I think the fact that I and probably many other people have put so much thought into this just shows that we all do actually genuinely care about the damn thing. And we're all very invested in this game doing well. But yes, a bit of a long one. Lot to chew on though there, hopefully. I'll see you in future videos. If these Darkest Dungeon videos do particularly well, I might put more on the channel. You can see some more of my epic cleric plays. I will... Bit of a spoiler on this one. This does not... Well, you'll see how it goes, and it kind of gets to my point of the map and spawning of things with this. But I'll just let this run out. You can see the end of it before the video ends. I hope to see you, though, in the next one. Thanks for watching. Right. I would have unmuted it, but I think though, if I remember correctly here, there's just a load of like me and the others yelling across the microphones at each other, and so there's that. But you can kind of see my point here, where, as I mentioned, you can kind of see the map. The circle dropped in a load of weird connecting corridors with upstairs and downstairs areas. As you can see on the map there at the bottom. It is unfortunate, and I die there. Again, the circle system and not having a map and the verticality and things that can happen with the portal spawning, it needs addressing. Like after those plays, I solo a Wraith, I revive my teammate, I get him out of there, selflessly letting him go so that I can find another one because I've got more health and can make it. Blasting all the enemies with my spells, and I'm heroically smashing through the dungeon, defeating a skeleton mage, and I'm defeated by a bad portal spawn. If that doesn't prove my point that the circle needs changing, I honestly don't know what does. Right. Thanks for watching and sticking it through to the end. I know it was a long one. I'll see you later.